She slammed the car door shut, and only then realized this wasn't her Uber. The rain hammered against the windows of the black sedan, as Amara Obi sank into leather seats that smelled of expensive cologne, and something else she couldn't name. Power maybe. Money definitely. Her phone buzzed in her hand, the Uber notification still glowing on the cracked screen, and her exhausted brain finally caught up to what her body had just done. This wasn't a Honda Civic. This wasn't her ride. She looked up slowly, her heart climbing into her throat. In the rearview mirror, a pair of dark eyes stared back at her. Not the driver, someone else. Someone was sitting in the back seat with her, so still she hadn't noticed him in her desperate scramble to escape the rain. If you want to know how this impossible night changed both their lives forever, stay until the end. You won't believe where this story goes. The hospital parking lot was already disappearing behind them, as the car pulled smoothly onto the empty street. It was 3:17 in the morning, and Amara had just finished a 12-hour shift that had stretched into 16 because 2 nurses called out and a trauma patient coded twice. Her scrubs still had someone else's blood on them. Her feet ached. Her mind was soup. And now she was in a stranger's car, moving away from safety with every passing second. "I'm sorry," she blurted out, her voice cracking. I didn't mean to, please just let me out." Her hand shot to the door handle, fingers wrapping around cold metal. The driver's shoulders tensed. She saw his hand move toward something under his jacket. "Sit." The voice came from beside her, low and calm, with an accent that softened the edges of his words. Korean, she thought distantly, though her brain was too flooded with adrenaline to process much beyond the simple fact that she might die tonight. "If I wanted you out," he continued, his tone unchanged, "you'd already be gone." Amara's hand froze on the handle. She turned slowly to look at the man beside her. He was younger than his voice suggested, maybe early 30s, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. His face was beautiful in a cold, carved way, like a statue that had never learned to smile. Dark hair swept back from his forehead. Strong jaw. Eyes that seemed to catalog everything about her in a single glance. The blood on her scrubs, the exhaustion in her posture, the cheap phone clutched in her shaking hand. "Where were you trying to go?" he asked. The question was so unexpected that Amara answered before she could think better of it. "Jackson Street. The apartments in Jackson." He said nothing for a long moment, just studied her with those unreadable eyes. Then he turned to the driver and spoke in Korean, his voice still calm, still controlled. The driver nodded once. The car changed direction. "What are you doing?" Amara asked, her voice smaller now. "Taking you home." "I don't understand." "You got into the wrong car," he said simply. "A mistake. I'm correcting it." Amara's mind spun. This made no sense. Men who looked like him, who moved like him, who had drivers and wore suits that expensive at 3 in the morning, they didn't just give lost nurses rides home. They didn't speak in calm voices and respect boundaries. Unless they wanted something. "What do you want from me?" she asked, trying to sound braver than she felt. He almost smiled. "Almost. Nothing. People like you always want something." Now he did smile, but it was sad around the edges. "People like me," he repeated softly. "You're very perceptive." The rain had slowed to a drizzle. Through the window, Amara could see the city passing by in streaks of neon and shadow. They were heading toward her neighborhood, she realized. He'd actually told the driver to take her home. Her exhaustion hit her all at once. A wave so powerful it made her eyes water. She'd been awake for 20 hours. Before this shift, she'd sat with her mother at the care facility, watching the woman who raised her fail to remember her name. Before that, she'd picked up an extra shift to help cover the bills that never stopped coming. She was so tired. Her head dropped back against the seat. Just for a moment, she told herself. Just until they reached her building. She fell asleep in the car of a man she was certain could end her life. When she woke, the car had stopped. Morning light filtered through the windows, gray and weak. Amara jerked upright, her heart pounding, and looked around wildly. She was parked outside her apartment building. Alone. The driver was gone. The dangerous man was gone. For a surreal moment, she wondered if she dreamed the whole thing. Some exhaustion-induced hallucination brought on by too many shifts and not enough sleep. Then she saw her hospital badge lying on the seat beside her, folded neatly with her name facing up. He had touched nothing except her life. Amara grabbed the badge with trembling fingers and bolted from the car. not looking back until she was safely inside her building with the door locked behind her. Only then did she let herself breathe. She showered, changed, stared at herself in the mirror and tried to make sense of what had happened. In the light of day, in the safety of her tiny apartment, the whole thing seemed impossible. Who was he? Why had he helped her? And why did some small stupid part of her wish she'd asked his name? 2 days passed. 2 long shifts at the hospital, 2 nights of fitful sleep interrupted by dreams of dark eyes and quiet voices. Amara told herself to forget it. It was a strange encounter, nothing more. She'd been lucky. She should be grateful and move on. But on the 3rd night, as she walked out of the hospital at 2 a.m., she saw the black sedan waiting in the same spot where she'd made her mistake. Her feet stopped moving. Her breath caught. The back door opened and he stepped out. He looked exactly the same. The expensive suit, the careful posture, the face that revealed nothing. But something was different about his eyes. They held a question. "I needed to know you made it home safely," he said, his voice carrying across the empty parking lot. "That's all." Amara's heart hammered against her ribs, but not entirely from fear this time. There was something else mixed in, something she didn't want to examine too closely. "I did," she said, staying where she was. "Thank you." He nodded once, as if that was the answer he'd come for. He turned to get back in the car. "Wait," she heard herself say. He paused, looking back at her. "I don't even know your name." "June," he said after a moment. "June Park." "Amara," she offered, though he probably already knew that from her badge. "Amara Obi." "I know." He said it gently, not threateningly. "You should go inside, Amara. It's late." "Why did you come back?" The question burst out of her before she could stop it. "You could have just let it go. I was nobody. A mistake." Something flickered across his face, there and gone so fast she almost missed it. "Because in my world nobody checks to see if someone made it home," he said quietly. "And I wanted to be the kind of man who does." The words hung in the cold air between them. Amara felt something shift in her chest, some wall she'd built starting to crack. "I don't deal with men like you," she said, but her voice was softer now. "I know that too." He held her gaze. "I respect it." That respect, that simple acknowledgement of her boundary without argument or manipulation, did something to her. It reached past her defenses and touched something she'd kept locked away for years. "Good night, June Park," she said. "Good night, Amara Obi." She watched him drive away, and this time she wasn't afraid. She was curious. The coffee shop was 3 blocks from the hospital, small and worn but open all night for nurses and insomniacs. Amara sat by the window on her break 5 nights later, stirring sugar into bad coffee and trying not to watch the door. He came at midnight, exactly when he'd said he would. "Thank you for meeting me," June said, sliding into the booth across from her. He looked different in a simple black sweater and jeans, less like a statue and more like a person. "I almost didn't," Amara admitted. "Why did you?" She took a sip of her coffee, buying time. "Because you're the first man in a long time who asked instead of assumed." They talked for an hour. Then 2. Amara found herself telling him things she rarely shared. About her mother's Alzheimer's, about growing up poor in a neighborhood where gunshots were background noise, about choosing nursing because she wanted to help people even though the system kept trying to break her. He listened in a way that made her feel heard. Really heard. "What about you?" she asked finally. "What do you do, June Park?" His expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. "I manage my family's business interests." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I can give you right now." Amara leaned back, studying him. "Your world. The one where nobody checks if people make it home. What kind of world is that?" "A dark one," he said simply. "One I was born into, not one I chose." "Everyone has choices." "Not everyone." He met her gaze steadily. "Some of us inherit debts we spend our whole lives trying to pay." She wanted to push, to demand real answers, but something in his voice stopped her. There was pain there, old and deep. "My mother doesn't remember me anymore," Amara said quietly. "Some days she thinks I'm her sister. Other days she's terrified of me. Thinks I'm a stranger trying to hurt her. But I still go. Every day I'm not working, I sit with her, and I tell her stories about her life. About my life. About us. Because even if she can't remember, I can. Someone should carry those memories." June's jaw tightened. "That's remarkable." It's just love, Amara said. The only kind that matters. He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable passing across his face. I had a sister, he said finally. She died when I was 15. My father's enemies. He stopped, shook his head. She was kind like you. She wanted to be a teacher. I'm sorry. So am I. He stood, placing money on the table for both their coffees. I should go. But I'd like to see you again if you're willing. Amara knew she should say no. Everything about this man screamed danger, complication, pain. But when she looked at him, she didn't just see the cold exterior. She saw the boy who'd lost his sister. The man who checked if strangers made it home. Tomorrow, she said. Same time. His smile was small but real. Tomorrow. They fell into a pattern. Coffee at midnight when her shift allowed. Walks through the city in the early morning hours when the streets were empty, and the world felt like it belonged only to them. He never pushed, never demanded more than she was willing to give. She was falling for the calm in a man built for chaos. 3 weeks after their first real conversation, Amara noticed the car. It was parked across from her apartment building, a gray sedan with tinted windows. The same car had been there the night before. And the night before that. She called June immediately. There's someone watching my building, she said without preamble when he answered. His voice sharpened. Since when? 3 days. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm sending someone to get you. Pack a bag. June, what's going on? Please, Amara. Trust me. She did, which terrified her. She packed a bag, and when the black sedan pulled up, the familiar one with the silent driver, she got in without hesitation. They took her to a hotel downtown. A suite on the 20th floor with a view of the city. June was waiting inside, pacing like a caged animal. Tell me the truth, Amara demanded. All of it. What are you? He stopped pacing. Looked at her with those dark, unreadable eyes. I'm the head of a Korean organized crime family, he said flatly. My father ran it before me. His father before him. We control imports, protection, and several legitimate businesses that fund less legitimate ones. I've hurt people. I've killed people. And now my enemies have noticed you. The words should have sent her running. Should have made her hate him, fear him. Instead, she just felt tired. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted you to know me first, he said quietly. Not what I am. Who I am. And who are you, June? He moved closer, stopping just within reach. I'm someone who was born into blood and taught that power is the only thing that matters. I'm someone who's done terrible things because I believed I had no choice. But I'm also someone who met a woman who fell asleep in my car because she trusted. Or maybe was just too exhausted to care. And for the first time in my life, I wanted to be better. Amara's eyes burned. You can't protect me from your world by hiding me. If you stay near me, he said, his voice rough, your life will never be simple again. There will always be threats. Always dangers. I can't promise you safety. I can barely promise you tomorrow. Then why are you doing this? Because the thought of something happening to you. He stopped, jaw clenched. Because I'm selfish enough to want you in my life, even though you deserve so much better. She stepped forward and took his hand. His fingers were cold, trembling slightly. I work in an ER, she said. I see people die. I hold their hands while they take their last breaths. I know better than most that tomorrow isn't promised to anyone. So don't you dare make decisions for me about what I deserve or don't deserve. Amara. I see you, she said fiercely. Not just what you are. I see who you are. The man who checks if people make it home. Who listens when I talk about my mother. Who told me about his sister even though it hurt. That's who I'm choosing. He pulled her into his arms then, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. You're the most foolish, brave woman I've ever met, he whispered against her hair. I know, she whispered back. The hotel became her sanctuary for 2 weeks while June dealt with whatever threats were circling. She called out of work, claiming a family emergency. In truth, she spent the days sleeping, reading, and thinking. And when June came at night, they talked for hours about everything and nothing. Tell me about your mother, he said one night, lying beside her on the bed, both of them fully clothed, just existing in the same space. She was fierce, Amara said, smiling at the ceiling. Worked 3 jobs to keep us fed. Never let me see her cry, even when things were impossible. She taught me that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about getting back up every single time. She'd be proud of you. I hope so. Some days I feel like I'm failing her. You're not. He turned his head to look at her. You're exactly who she raised you to be. What about your father? Amara asked. You never talk about him. June's expression hardened. He taught me that love is weakness. That caring about anyone makes you vulnerable. That power is the only currency that matters. He paused. I'm starting to think he was wrong about all of it. Starting to. She raised an eyebrow. Believing something your whole life doesn't change overnight, he said softly, even when you desperately want it to. On the 15th night, Amara's phone rang at 11 p.m. The hospital. Emergency. They needed her. Mass casualty incident. All hands on deck. I have to go, she told June. No. June. It's not safe. She stood grabbing her bag. People are dying. I'm a nurse. I don't get to choose safety over doing my job. They argued for 10 minutes, his fear battling her determination. Finally he nodded, jaw tight. I'm coming with you. You can't. I'm coming with you, he repeated, in a tone that left no room for argument. The hospital was in chaos. Amara threw herself into the work, moving from patient to patient, stopping bleeding, starting IVs, coordinating with doctors. June stayed in the waiting room. A silent presence she was hyper-aware of even in the madness. For hours into her shift, a man stumbled into the ER. He was bleeding from his side, leaning heavily against the doorframe. His eyes found June across the crowded room, and something passed between them. Recognition, hatred, something darker. June Park, the man said, his voice carrying despite the noise. Finally found you. Everything happened too fast. The man reached for something under his jacket. June moved, faster than Amara would have thought possible. The silent driver materialized from nowhere. Gunshots cracked through the air. Amara hit the ground, covering a patient with her body. Screaming. More shots. Then silence. When she looked up, the stranger was dead on the floor. The driver was bleeding from his shoulder. And June was standing over them both, a gun in his hand, his face completely empty of expression. Their eyes met across the chaos. Get him to a room, June said quietly. Now. Amara didn't think. She grabbed a wheelchair, helped the driver into it, and pushed him toward the private examination rooms at the back of the ER. June followed, locking the door behind them. You can't be here, Amara said, her hands already assessing the driver's wound. The police will be dealt with, June said. Can you help him? It's a through and through. He'll need stitches, antibiotics, and monitoring for infection. Her training took over, pushing aside the shock. I need supplies. June disappeared, returning 5 minutes later with everything she'd asked for. Amara worked in silence, cleaning the wound, numbing the area, beginning the careful process of stitching torn flesh back together. Her hands shook, but they never slipped. You should have told me, she said quietly as she worked, that they'd come here. I didn't know, June said. I thought I'd handled it. How many? She pulled another stitch tight. How many lives have you ruined, June? How many people have you hurt? He didn't answer for a long time. The driver, she'd learned his name was Min, sat stoically, not making a sound despite the pain. More than I can count, June said finally. More than I can ever make right. Amara tied off the last stitch, bandaged the wound and turned to face him. Why do you do it? Because it's all I know. His voice was raw. Because I was born into blood, and I didn't know there was any other way to live. Until I met you. Don't put that on me, she said sharply. I can't be your redemption. I'm not asking you to be. He stepped closer. I'm just telling you the truth. You asked what I want. I want to be someone who deserves you. I want to walk away from all of this. But I don't know if I can. Why not? Because walking away means leaving people vulnerable. My people. The ones who depend on me for protection, for income. If I disappear, someone worse takes my place. Someone who won't have even the few lines I refuse to cross. Amara cleaned her hands, her mind spinning. That's not an excuse. I know, he said quietly. But it's the truth. She looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who checked if strangers made it home safely. Who told her about his dead sister. Who was capable of terrible violence but chose mercy when he could. I was born into blood, June said into the silence. But I don't want to die there. The words hit her chest like a physical blow. She saw it then, the exhaustion behind his eyes. The weight of years spent being someone he hated. The desperate, fragile hope that maybe somehow he could be different. Then don't, she said simply. Choose something else. It's not that easy. Nothing worth doing is. Min stood slowly, testing his shoulder. He bowed to Amara, a gesture of deep respect, and left the room without a word. June and Amara stood alone in the small examination room, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, the distant sounds of the ER filtering through the walls. Come here, she said softly. He moved into her arms, and this time when he held her, she felt him shake. Not from fear. From relief. From the overwhelming weight of being seen, all of him, the darkness and the light, and not being rejected. I can't promise you this works, Amara whispered against his chest. I can't promise I won't leave when things get too hard. But I can promise I'll try. If you promise you'll try too. I promise, he said hoarsely. I swear to you I'll try. They stayed like that for a long time, two people from completely different worlds, holding on to each other like lifelines. The fallout from the hospital shooting was swift and complicated. June's lawyers descended like a storm, managing narratives, paying off witnesses, ensuring that what should have been a massive investigation disappeared into paperwork and bureaucratic delays. Amara hated it, hated seeing the system she worked in being manipulated, but she understood it too. This was his world. These were the tools he'd learned to use. 3 days after the shooting, June disappeared. No calls. No messages. Just silence. Amara tried not to panic. Tried to tell herself he was handling business, cleaning up messes. But the silence stretched from days into a week, and fear took root in her chest. She was working a night shift when Min appeared at the ER entrance. Come with me, he said in his quiet, accented English. Please. She didn't ask questions. Just grabbed her coat and followed. They drove for an hour outside the city, to a compound hidden behind high walls and electronic gates. Min led her through a maze of hallways to a room where June sat alone, staring at nothing. He looked terrible. Bruised. Exhausted. Haunted. Leave us, he said to Min without looking up. The door clicked shut. Amara crossed the room and knelt in front of him, taking his hands in hers. What happened? My father's old partners, June said, his voice distant. They wanted control. They challenged me. I had to prove I was still strong enough to lead. She saw it in his eyes, the things he'd done, the violence he'd committed, the darkness he'd waded back into even as he was trying to find light. Did you kill them? She asked quietly. Some of them. He finally looked at her. I'm sorry. I know you wanted me to be better. I tried, Amara. But they came from my people. For the families who depend on us. I couldn't. Stop, she said firmly. Stop apologizing for surviving. This isn't surviving. This is you protecting people, she interrupted. I don't like it. I hate the violence. But I understand that in your world, sometimes violence is the only language people speak. I'm not going to shame you for that. His eyes filled with something that might have been tears. How can you still look at me like that? Like what? Like I'm worth saving. Amara cupped his face in her hands. Because you are. Not despite the darkness, June. Including it. You're complicated and messy, and sometimes you make choices I don't agree with. But you're also brave and loyal and trying so damn hard to be better than what you were taught to be. That's worth everything. He pulled her into his lap, holding her like she was the only solid thing in his universe. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not, she agreed, making him huff a sound that was almost a laugh. But you've got me anyway. They stayed like that until the sun rose, two people trying to build something beautiful out of broken pieces. 2 months passed. June began the slow, dangerous process of restructuring his organization, pushing out the violent elements, investing in legitimate businesses, creating distance between himself and the worst of what his family had built. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't even close. But it changed, and change was something. Amara returned to work, to her life, but now June was woven into it. He came to the hospital to walk her home, sat with her when she visited her mother, learned to exist in the ordinary, quiet moments that had never been part of his world before. It wasn't perfect. There were still threats, still violence lurking at the edges. Still nights when he came to her apartment with blood on his clothes and exhaustion in his eyes. But there was also laughter. Lazy Sunday mornings. Inside jokes. The slow, careful building of trust. She was teaching him how to be soft. He was teaching her how to be fierce. The night everything changed started like any other. Amara was finishing her shift when June called. "I need to see you," he said, his voice strange. "Can you come to the waterfront? Now? It's almost midnight. Please." She went, of course. Found him standing alone on an empty pier. The city lights reflecting off dark water. "They offered me a deal," he said without preamble. "The other families. The ones still standing. They want to consolidate power. Unify under one leadership. And they want you." "Yes. That's good, isn't it? More control means more ability to change things. There's a condition." He turned to face her, his expression wrecked. "I have to cut ties with you. Completely. They see you as a weakness. A distraction. They won't accept my leadership if we're." He couldn't finish the sentence. Amara felt her heart crack. "What did you tell them?" "That I need time to think." "June, I've spent my whole life being told that power is everything," he said roughly. "That love makes you weak. That caring about someone is the fastest way to lose everything. I believed it. I built my entire existence around that belief. And now," he stepped closer, taking her hands. "Now I know they're wrong. Power is nothing. Control is nothing. I've ruled empires, Amara. I've had people fear me, respect me, obey my every word. And none of it, not a single second of it, has made me feel the way I feel when I'm with you." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "So what are you going to do?" "I'm going to walk away," he said simply. "From all of it. The organization, the power, the legacy. I'll make sure my people are protected, that they have leadership that won't betray them. But I'm done. Because loving you feels heavier than any throne." "That's insane," she whispered. "You can't just walk away from your entire life. Watch me. They'll come after you. Probably. June, I spent 15 years being what my father wanted me to be," he said fiercely. 15 years hurting people, building an empire of fear and blood. I can't get that time back. I can't undo what I've done. But I can choose what happens next. And I choose you. I choose us. I choose the life we could build together, whatever that looks like. Amara threw her arms around him, sobbing into his chest. "You're an idiot." "I know." He laughed, the sound wet. "But I'm your idiot." They stood on that pier until dawn, making plans. Talking about where they'd go, what they'd do. It wouldn't be easy. There would be consequences. Threats. Maybe even violence. But they'd face it together. 6 weeks later, after June had carefully, meticulously transferred power to someone he trusted, after he'd ensured his people would be protected, after he'd burned every bridge that tied him to his old life, they left Atlanta. They chose a small town in North Carolina, far from the city, far from everything they'd known. Amara found work at a local hospital. June started a legitimate security consulting business, using his skills for something that didn't involve hurting people. It was quiet, simple, strange. It was perfect. 3 months after the move, Amara finished a shift and walked out to find June waiting in the parking lot. Not in a black sedan with a silent driver. In a used Honda Civic, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Ready to go home?" he asked. "Always," she said, sliding into the passenger seat. As they drove through the small town toward the house they'd bought together. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom with a yard and neighbors who smiled and waved. Amara looked over at him. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Giving up everything?" June reached over and took her hand. "I didn't give up on everything," he said. "I gave up on nothing. And I gained the only thing that ever mattered." She squeezed his fingers, smiling. "You've gotten sentimental in your old age. Your influence. Good." They pulled into their driveway as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Inside, dinner was waiting, something June had learned to cook from YouTube videos, which meant it would probably be half-burned but made with love. This was their life now. Ordinary, quiet, safe, and absolutely extraordinary. If this story moved you, like the video, subscribe, share, and tell me in the comments, would you have gotten into that car? And what would you have done in Amara's position? Drop your thoughts below. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss stories like this. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.